These are the human stories, the heartbreaks and turbulent times, power players and defining moments, confidences and confessions, triumphs and celebrations. These are the stories of the Bombers.
The queues trying to get into the ground were enormous, snaking around most of the Great Southern Stand as people hoped to snap up the 30,000 seats available on the day. For many, the wait was more than 2 hours, but then the inevitable. The tickets were sold out and gatekeepers struggled to shut gates, much to the fury of those who missed out.
The inaugural ANZAC Day commemorative match between Essendon and Collingwood.
Leading into an ANZAC Day game, I remember being Sheets handing us books about Gallipoli and saying, read this and understand the sacrifice that's been made by our previous servicemen for us to enjoy the lifestyle that we've got today.
30 possessions last week against Melbourne, a brilliant second half in particular. James Hird all the way down from half forward, marks at half back, thumps it to centre half forward. Young is there, Christian the punch from behind. It goes to Mercury, open space for Mark Mercury. He goes for the goal. Another one.
About 115 or 112,000 turned up the MCG and about 10, 15 couldn't get in, so they were annoyed. So that's the first time a home and away game was crowded that much that you couldn't get people in. So we did hit a raw nerve, and that's a great credit to the RSL and a great credit to Bruce Ruxton as the chairman.
Well, some changes by Lee Matthews. McGuan out on the wing on Masiti. That's been an interesting one. Denham gets it across to Long. Fires through the hand pass to Fraser. He's decked after he got rid of his kick. Fletcher on the forward line. Off hands to Cockatoo Collins. A goal!
I remember going back close to the end of the final quarter of the siren. The game was in the balance, and being a metre or two away from Joe Masidi and Mark Mercury in the centre bounce and not being able to hear them because the crowd was that loud. So
it's remaining, and the score's level. Buckley, haven't seen so much of him in the last quarter. He gives up the hand pass to O'Donnell. Long kick by O'Donnell. O'Connor! That clears him. Well played, O'Connor. Here's her. Sees daylight. Goes for it and kicks it. Look at that!
But it wasn't until towards the end of the game, when the scores were close, that we realised how big the crowd was, and the roar to the deathly silence when the game was drawn was quite remarkable.
There is time. 15 seconds left. Nathan Buckley goes short. Rockers there. Front of the pack. All Essendon. I reckon it's going to be a draw. Grenvold. Time is out. 4 seconds left. The kick by Grenvold. There's the siren. Unbelievable. The season's first draw.
I debuted in '96, and I think 3 or 4 of my teammates also debuted over the next 2 or 3 years on Anzac Day. I played my first game, worked the day before, worked the day after. Fortunately, the boss, or it was a public holiday, so I didn't have to work on the day of the game. But yeah, it was just a huge thrill to run out.
Hird kicks a high ball in towards Salmon. He's surrounded, out at the back, and socket off the ground for a goal! What a start! Matthew Lloyd, welcome!
I first met Kevin Sheedy. We were at a golf course in Maribyrnong, around the Maribyrnong there, and he said to me, I want you to own a house out of football.
Lloyd's a wonderful back, and he's got it again.
Try and own a house by the end of your career, just to get their head around their money, because like at this stage, particularly early, they didn't have player managers.
If you get yourself a house out of football, you've done pretty well. So that's probably one thing I do remember. I'm not sure of his tips, his trifectas and quaddies and whatever else he tries to give me.
He thinks about life and not just footy. One of his great things was that, you blokes should own your own house by the time you finish your careers. Just little things like that. You just sow the seed.
Sheedy sprung a surprise in round 14 with the selection of a young Matthew Lloyd.
I'd never played full forward in my life, so I'd played centre forward, centre back, ruck. But he obviously saw already from my tapes or as a kid that he identified me as being the club's next full forward, and I was 16 years of age.
Lloyd learnt the hard way that he needed to protect himself.
Go himself, it's a thumping kick. Lloyd gets double teamed and Scarlett.
Suddenly, I'm getting full backs like Michael Martin, Jamie Shanahan, Stephen Cridiuk, Andrew Dunkley. They were tough full backs, and it was a real quick initiation. Sheeds pretty much said, mate, if a bloke drops back in the hole of you, you've got to make him pay. There was no sympathy. It was, if you keep handling your close attention the way you are, which you're just putting up with it, and understand that it's going to come every week because everyone knows you don't handle it well.
Hill, Lloyd and Scarlett, and it's against Lloyd.
I went about it the wrong way. I got suspended about 4 times in about 10 or 11 weeks, and that's where the Velvet Sledgehammer nickname came from.
Long, clever play to Jacobs, paddles aboard a 50, Hurd under pressure, did well. He's got it. Lloyd is marked in front of Mighty Mick.
He's going to wind himself up too, and he's going to kick a ball. You can race to your feet.
I started kicking lots of goals, and people viewed me in a different light through that period. So it was a war of attrition for me early, but through Sheeds, Harves and Wallace, I was able to get through it.
Well, come on, Matthew, get the goal, eh?
Just 22 years of age.
History.
He's got it.
Who's in the back? McCurry!
Ahead, Essendon loses the unlosable, and the quest for redemption fuels the Bombers' desire. The Bombers finished the 1999 home and away season on top of the ladder, with 18 wins and just 4 losses. But the preliminary final against Carlton had a dramatic climax.
But if this is it, give us more. The Bombers' last roll of the dice, maybe. Johnson. Is it going to be the young guns? He almost threw it out to Mercedes. It looked like a throw. It doesn't matter now. Play on. They need a mark. Alessio in front. Who's at the back? McCurry! McCurry!
99 prelim, certainly that was the one that got away from us. But looking back on it, it was the one that made 2000 such a powerful year.
His kick is a baller, straight to Wallace. The mean bad man. Can he cover himself in glory? He's lost it, and Murphy takes it away. That could be the turnover that cost them. Murphy goes towards the half-forward line. Ratner's got it. He'll take his time, and that could just about seal it. Murphy drops in the hole on the 50.
We lose the unlosable in 99. We had 2 or 3 days of drowning our sorrows, and about the Wednesday of grand final week, North Melbourne were playing Carlton in the 99 grand final. Kevin Sheedy sends a message out saying the club has purchased 40 grand final tickets, you're all going to watch.
He just said you just gift wrapped it a premiership to North Melbourne.
Kicks the ball back inside. Carey's got it.
Imagine there was North supporters, Carlton supporters all grabbing their throats saying you've choked. You should be here and you're not. You choked last week. So it was hard. It was hard watching.
Caresses him through, and he's got 2.
We get halfway through the last quarter, and Kevin Sheedy says, all right, boys, get up, follow me. We're walking out of the ground. You can imagine what we were copping as we were walking out, and we crossed the road just near the Hilton Hotel there. There was a restaurant, and Robert Shaw, his assistant coach, was there waiting for us. And he had a folder. He handed out folders, and he said, this is where our 2000 campaign starts. And Shawry in the folder had the 4 teams we need to beat in 2000 to win the premiership. It was Melbourne, who we played in the grand final, Carlton, who we played in the preliminary, and North Melbourne, who we smashed in the first final. It was just an amazing coaching performance where they changed our mindset from dwelling on it for a month and saying, okay, the 2000 season starts now. They brought a training camp forward. We had an intense training camp at Essendon Grammar, and by the time round one came, mate, we were as driven, hard. We didn't sing the club song for any victory. There was only one win that was going to do it for us, and that was to the grand final.
Long, clever play to Jacobs. Paddles aboard a 50. Hurd under pressure, did well. He's got it.
I think we averaged, that winning margin that year. It might be wrong, but, well and truly over 35 points per game. So it was just a good, tough side.
On the day before the preliminary final against Carlton, James Hurd received terrible news.
I remember being at training about 3 o'clock on Friday, and we just finished the warm-up, and Matthew Drain walked out to me with a mobile phone onto the training track. It's never a good sign when team manager's coming out to you with a mobile phone. And it was Tanya. She said, "Oh, you better come to the hospital because there's something seriously wrong with Stephanie." And we spent the next 4 or 5 days in hospital, and Tanya didn't leave a bedside for the whole time. But I do remember at 2 a.m. on the Saturday morning before the prelim, when Steph was in intensive care. They'd just done the lumbar puncture to test the spinal fluid, and everyone was pretty distraught at what possibly could happen. And Sheeds turned up. And, in the back of my mind, I knew we had to play the preliminary final the next day against Carlton, and knowing that the year before we'd lost to Carlton in the 99 prelim, and there was a lot of pressure on us to play well and to win. And I was pretty undecided whether I was going to play or not. You've got your daughter in a life-threatening situation should you play. And Sheeds came in and just sat with us for about an hour and a half, and then before he left, he said, "Look, I don't care what you do, whether you want to play, you don't want to play, your daughter's life is, much more important than football." That to me was, it doesn't sound like much now, but back in the moment, it felt like a very selfless thing for him to say, because his career was riding on me playing and not playing as well as the captain of the club. Fortunately, Steph came out of the coma maybe 3 hours before the game, and I went to the game and played.
So Essendon are charging onto a grand final they couldn't make last season, and the heartache is a thing of the past. Bombers are through. It'll be the Bombers and the Demons.
King Richard, Dick Reynolds, triple Brownlow medalist, coached the Bombers to 4 flags. It's the record at Essendon that Kevin Sheedy would equal today if the Bombers are successful.
He gets another chance. We've got a bounce 20 metres out. Barnes contests. Hurd snaps. James Hurd.
One of the best players in the 2000 grand final was a knockabout character who the club had discarded 9 years earlier, John Barnes.
Look, I hated Cheese's guts for a good 5-6 years, and was well known. I went on the footy show and told Cheese to go get stuffed, and I didn't mind doing that.
Fletcher towards Barnes. Uze flies with him, but this time Barnes holds.
When I left in 91, or when I got given the arse, Cheese gave me a magnet with respect on it. And I just thought respect was giving up your chair for an old lady in a bus or something like that. And I went home and looked it up, and respect comes in so many different ways, shapes and forms, and thank you, please, all the rest of it, honesty, integrity. And went away and looked at it and stopped thinking about myself and thought of others. And when I come back to Essendon the second time round, Sheed says, "I don't want any." I said, "Sheeds, I'm over that."
Barnes has got Ramanauskas, he's got him.
Johnson gives it to Powell. They get it away once again to Uze. He gets caught, loses to guess who? James Hurd. A floating punt kick in towards Lloyd. They're on the verge of collecting their 16th premiership flag. Lloyd from 45 kicks the goal. He's got 4.
James Hurd, who I really idolised and looked up to, he kicked me a ball maybe 5 minutes into the last quarter, and I was able to go back and slot it, and he jumped into my arms, and we said we're about to win a premiership, so that was sort of a special, touching moment for the two of us on that amazing day.
You could argue forever who is the best team of all time, but as Jason said earlier, this is the best season we've ever seen. Kevin Sheedy joins Dick Reynolds as the most successful club in over 100 years at this famous club, and they this 16th premiership. And is there a better story than James Hurd? Well, maybe Barnesy and Wallace get close.
Barnesy, you finally got one there, mate. I'll give you about 3 losses. Just tell us about it. Come on. We can't. Go and speak.
To all you Bomber fans, thanks for your loyal support, and to all the parents that produce our footballers all around Australia, thank you very much for looking after the game. Thanks a lot.
We had a big kiss and a cuddle on the side of and a few tears, pretty emotional. And everyone in life has their problems, right? You sort of, when you go into intensive care at the Royal Children's and you see your own daughter with tubes tied up to her, but then you look around and you're not the only one. There's plenty of parents who have some pretty serious issues, so it was a pretty sobering moment.
You know, I remember celebrations just up here in '93 in the social club where we just came back and it was, you know, there were people everywhere cheering, and it's a bit of a weird thing to say, but it probably took me to sort of finish my career to realise, you know, what it actually does mean to people.
So we're ready to start at the MCG.
In round 16 of 2001, more than 50,000 people witnessed an amazing match.
He's been a star this quarter.
At quarter time, North Melbourne had scored 12 goals 1 and Essendon 2 goals 3.
Kevin Sheedy with a rare look of concern on his face.
I'll never forget walking in at quarter time, and I saw Sheedy coming down from the stands, MCG stand, and his face was as red as a tomato. I don't remember too many speeches from coaches or captains, but James Hurd, he said to Sheeds, "Can I speak to the players first?" And he got us all in, and he said, "Guys, we can't do anything about what just went on." He focused on some areas where they're beating us to the ball and all that sort of thing. But he said, "We're 11 goals down. Let's break this down into quarters." 6 goals at half-time. Let's halve. Let's get it to half. Then 3-quarter time, we'll get it to 3. And then we will beat them in the last quarter.
No, it wasn't 50. Hurd played on, and then in slow motion, he kicked the goal.
Sheeds was such a positive coach, and not only in that game, but any game. Whenever we were 5 or 6 goals down, we were never 5 or 6 goals down. Depending on how long was left in the game, we needed to make up, if it was 6 goals at half-time, we needed to make up 3 goals in the third quarter and 3 goals in the last quarter.
Pressure on. Lallick's trying to get it out. The pressure is really on now. Hurd, Caracella, he can launch one. He had the time. He used the time. He used it wisely. And he kicks a goal. Here they come. He spills it, but gets a chance to recover. Mercury normally works so well in those situations, as does Hurd. Barnard just bangs it onto the boot, and Lloyd's going to get another one. He's going to get another one. 6 to the best from Matthew Lloyd.
This is fitting of a grand final at the moment. Hard with the Caracella. Isn't he starting to get the football? Handball over the top towards Heffernan. Steadies him up. Goes inside. All the numbers forward. Here's Bolton. He should kick a goal. He's in space. Lines it up. The Bombers have kicked in a row.
Harris is in the game, but this man has ripped them apart out of the middle. Deserves a goal. Winds up for another one. And slams it through. Jason Johnson. Nice work from Solomon. Gets it in quickly. Alessio back on the ground. The big man's got it. Not paid. Cleaned up by McGrath, and he kicks a goal. It's a 1-point ball game at the MCG. What a comeback by Essendon. From 69 points down, they've got back to 1. And now Barnard on the rebound. Gives it to Hurd, who gives it into the middle of the ground, looking for the man who's kicked 9. Matty Lloyd, keep it moving. Caracella, dribbling kick. Mercury, brilliant stuff. Corey McGrath passes it for Alessio. Well, it doesn't matter. He didn't touch
Richard. And the Kangaroos have got to try and invent something to get back in the contest, and they're led by 69 points, but still they come the Dogs. Carousella, Moorcroft, Ben Sorenport, he's kicked another one. Can you believe that?
Hurd, around the line it goes. Moorcroft, let it go. Blake Carousella, it's all over now. The Bombers might just about be home. The clock is counting and the game is over. One of the best ever. One of the very best ever matches played on this magnificent ground over more than 100 years of football. And Kevin Sheedy has brought his team back from where no team has come back before. 69 points they were behind.
James Hurd was a player that was never beaten.
Kicks to Hurd. Hurd versus Luff over the shoulder on Hurd, I thought. Still with Hurd. Still with Hurd. What a goal! A beauty!
Mansfield looks for a free kick. Didn't get one. Hurd, 51 metres from goal. Has kicked a great goal.
I declare James Hurd and Michael Boss the joint winners of the 1996 Brownlow Medal.
He's pretty well balanced. I go give him a bit of a hard time. I mean, it's great to see him get a bit of a biff and a cut here and there because you can't run around the football ground looking like Robert Redford all your life.
Oh, Hurd, he wanted the footy then.
I think James' ability, and he's in the sort of Matthews category, where when the moment requires something, they have the inner belief and the physical and technical capacity to make the impact as required.
Looking awesome in this first term. Unloads a big bomb. He's got it. He's kicked three.
Because he had the blonde hair and he moved so gracefully, there was that thought or perception that he was one of those smooth players. But he was as hard and as tough as any player.
He's in great touch.
James Hurd is the greatest competitor that I ever played with.
So that's Lloyd. Gives it off to Hurd. Hurd bends it back.
There's a couple of blokes I could never convince to be over-aggressive to the part of cruel on a football field. Watson was one, and Hurd, and even Madden. You know, they're just too good. They're probably like Ken Fraser and Ron Evans. They're just nice people.
When I was at Geelong, I thought Hurdy was a bit of a protected species and a bit of an arrogant. But when I come back to Essendon, I was like Johnny Quinn had slapped that out of Hurdy, and I can quite honestly sit here right now and say James Hurd's one of the best captains I've ever come across, and probably one of the best blokes I've met out of footy.
James Hurd to me was someone that I knew in a game, if a game needed to be turned or something had to give, he'd throw himself in the midfield or he'd well and truly put his head over the footy. We knew he kicked goals. He wasn't, in my opinion, he wasn't the most skillful player going around, but he was someone that you'd watch train and you learn a lot off just the way he went about it.
1:31 apiece. Here comes Hurd again. Can he be the hero? Or can Lloyd be the hero? He gets to the front, no mark. Eagles have numbers around the football. Jones on hands and knees. Lloyd taps it out. Judd at the bottom of the pack. It's a bounce.
James Hurd got that ball out at the centre bounce. He's moving down towards this contest. If anybody's going to get it, it'll be James.
McDougall heads for the boundary line. Maybe Murphy should have kicked. Bullen. Hurd! Hurd! The fairy tale complete after a horror week. James Hurd, you are a genius.
You saw things that he did in games and you reflect back to his training habits and you see the reason why he kicks the goal against West Coast in the dying minutes of the game, because he rehearsed that goal thousands and thousands of times.
I don't think I've ever seen a player just control a quarter of football like this.
James practiced that kick after training 40 times till the bin was empty. So things with James didn't happen by fluke. James didn't come in as a talented, he was picked 70 or 80 in the draft. And yet he worked his backside off to become, arguably the club's greatest ever player.
Next on the Bombers, Herd, Rammer, The Long Walk, Job and the Supplement Saga, Fletcher the Record Breaker, and the Bombers in their 150th year.